we know free agency. We can't talk free agency without talking about the wide receiver position. I'm here with Tera Roberts, as you already know, and we're going to talk about these free agent wide receivers because there are some big-time names here. So we're going to talk about the top 10 fantasy wide receivers that are hitting free agency, starting with Cincinnati Bengal, Tee Higgins. Tera, what do we think? Because right now, if he takes a franchise tag, we're looking at $21 million. I do not see the Cincinnati Bengals letting him out of the room here this week. They're either going to franchise tag him or they're going to get him to a long-term deal.
It's weird. I think it's going to be franchise tag. And it's strange because the way that he was acting at the end of the season, it screamed that he was going to be on his way out, but we're expecting the franchise tag there. Obviously, we've getting a healthy Joe Burrow back means that they want to make that run. They know that they are a Super Bowl ready team. And if they remain as is and health is not an issue, they can absolutely get back there. So why not just tag him and run it back?
Absolutely. I'm with you here. I don't know how you let a guy you don't let talented players in their prime walk away. If this was Odell Beckham Jr. or one of these other wide receivers that's getting a little bit older, hitting that 30, 31 year age kind of mark, then I get it. They're still good, but they're coming to the end. Tee Higgins is just starting to peak. We know what he can do when given an opportunity. And the fact that the Bengals can lock him up with Burrow and Jamar Chase long-term, it's good news for this Bengals team moving forward. Now, another stud wide receiver that I don't see hitting the market, I think the franchise tag could possibly be put on Micheal Pittman of the Indianapolis Colts. We're both in agreement. We don't think Pittman or Higgins gets out of their current contracts. I mean, these teams are going to lock up these studs right now. I mean, if they're not locked up by now, then they're taking their sweet time. They need to move this process a little bit quicker. Tera, why is Pittman so good for this Colts team?
I mean, he's an alpha. Like, there's no other way. I know people have their skepticism, but I just need to just put that aside. Micheal Pittman is absolutely an alpha wide receiver one. And I just don't see a scenario where you want to take away that wide receiver one for your very close to rookie. I mean, let's be honest. There was a very short season for your, barely, second year quarterback that you've made this giant investment to. You've got this nice big safety blanket wide receiver one. Don't take it away. Move forward as is. Pay the money. You're financially in position to do so. It's best for Micheal Pittman to stay exactly where he is.
You hear that, Major? Micheal Pittman, alpha dog when it comes to this Colts team. I remember we had a little conversation, probably the beginning of the season when it came to Micheal Pittman. Yeah. Just saying. Now, we already agree that Higgins and Pittman, they're not going anywhere, but we can't say the same about Mike Evans. We already know the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are unlikely to franchise tag him because they're probably going to use that franchise tag on someone a little bit younger on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe an Antoine Winfield is the guy that I'm thinking that gets tagged here. So Mike Evans, there's going to be no shortage of suitors wherever he lands. Any team, there's about 30 teams or 28 teams right now that could use Mike Evans right now. I mean, not all of them can afford him, but where would you like to see him?
I would like to see him go to Baltimore. And I know that's probably a little bit controversial because everyone is so it's bag on Lamar Jackson season. And, do we really want Mike Evans to go to a low passing volume offense? Okay, I get it, but just go with me. The season that we saw, obviously this is the second MVP season, but the first MVP season where Lamar Jackson was absolutely spectacular, crazy. There was so many touchdown passes, and we just haven't been able to get that back for Lamar Jackson. And that is because outside of, obviously, love Zay Flowers, but outside of Mark Andrews, they don't have that, that big body red zone target that Lamar Jackson deserves and needs. They tried theoretically, I saw where they were going with Odell, but obviously that's just not, Odell just doesn't, he doesn't have it like that anymore, and that's okay. But Mike Evans still has that. He can absolutely thrive within that offense, and he doesn't have to be a massive volume type of receiver when you are literally the guy that can get out there and get a touchdown every single game, be that key red zone target for Lamar Jackson. I think the pairing would be absolutely insane if it happened.
And for me, I'm on the same kind of page here. But I don't know if I want him to go here necessarily, but I think Mike Evans to the Kansas City Chiefs makes a lot of sense. I mean, we all want to see the big names go to the Kansas City Chiefs, which is kind of ironic considering they were unwilling to pay the last big name wide receiver, but now maybe they are because they've saved some money in some other spots here. I mean, they've still got to deal with Chris Jones, but I'm pretty sure the Kansas City Chiefs would really appreciate a 1,000-yard wide receiver opposite of Rashee Rice with Travis Kelce and Mike Evans. Hey, he's looking for that second ring. I mean, he's got the ring. He's got a Hall of Fame resume already. A second ring pretty much solidifies him as a Hall of Famer, regardless of where you stand on a guy who's got 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons, 2 Super Bowl rings. You can't keep him out of the National Football Hall of Fame. The thing is, I do worry somewhat because I was watching the whole Patrick Mahomes average depth of touchdown. I think it's like 3.9 yards. So he's not one of those guys who's going to air it out, which is something that Mike Evans has always been good at. But I mean, if you got Travis Kelce and Mike Evans down in the red zone, what are teams going to do? It's going to be undefensible. And you throw in Rashee Rice and his yards after catch ability. I mean, the rich just get richer in this scenario. You know what? I'm actually kind of making myself sick talking about this. So I'm going to talk about another wide receiver who was a Baltimore Raven and had a lot of success with the Ravens, and that's Marquise Hollywood Brown, who's probably not going to stick around in Arizona this season.
When I'm looking at Hollywood Brown, this one is tough because we know in spurts he can absolutely perform from a fantasy perspective as a top 5 receiver. Like it's proven. It's just a matter of could you actually carry it out for an entire season? We've never seen it done. It's tough to imagine at this point that it does happen. So ideally, we don't want him to go to a place where he is going to be that alpha wide receiver 1. We want him to go to a place where he can play off of another wide receiver. So I'm thinking Atlanta. Go there. They've got no clear wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. Obviously, they might be investing their draft capital in, trading for a quarterback or trading up for a quarterback and hit free agency to get a wide receiver. Marquise Brown could be the wide receiver 2 in that offense, playing well off of Drake London as the alpha.
I'm going to give you a 2-for-1 here because I've got this guy and another wide receiver basically swapping places here. And I've got Calvin Ridley going to the desert here in Arizona to replace Marquise Hollywood Brown. And I got the Jaguars signing Marquise Brown to complement Christian Kirk. Not to mention Evan Ingram. We know that they got an option here for some speed. Marquise Hollywood Brown can stretch the defense out. Christian Kirk can do Christian Kirk type things. We know what Evan Ingram is able to do. I mean, 161 targets last season. Absolutely unreal. That's all good stuff. Then you flip it to the other side. Well, Kyler Murray, if he's not going to be able to keep Marquise Hollywood Brown, he's going to need another passing option. And when I look at the draft, there's some options here, whether it's Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors. You get one of those wide receivers and you complement him with a Calvin Ridley. And then all of a sudden, the Arizona Cardinals offense looks pretty darn good. You got 2 quality wide receivers on the outside. You got Trey McBride on the inside, and you got James Conner pounding it up in between the tackles. So Arizona could do themselves a pretty good favor here as far as their offense is concerned by signing Calvin Ridley, by drafting a wide receiver and seeing how that goes. And Marquise Hollywood Brown, I think, is a good field stretcher for someone like Trevor Lawrence, who didn't necessarily have that when Zay Jones kind of went down last season. So I think this is one of the things we can see these 2 wide receivers swapping places and both the teams and the players having success. Now, Tera, where do you see Calvin Ridley fitting in?
I don't hate the theory. But when I'm looking at Calvin Ridley, I think this is a good chance for Carolina to target him. Obviously, they've got an issue of they have a young quarterback who doesn't really have a alpha receiver. We love Adam Thielen, but it's tough to call a guy that's in his, is my age, a young wide receiver. They need to go out there and invest in somebody who is, has true alpha capabilities. And my hope is that they could go out and get a Tee Higgins or someone, but I don't think, obviously with franchise tagging, that's more than likely not going to be in the realm of possibilities. So they have to make it work with what's going to be available for them. I don't know if Mike Evans is the best fit for them in terms of their price range and budget and, goals in terms of how they're surrounding Bryce Young. So why not go out there and get Calvin Ridley probably slightly on the cheaper, because it was kind of a helter-skelter kind of year where we still got some question marks around him, but we know he can be a alpha or wide receiver. And it's like, if he gets in the right offense, which we obviously have seen this Dave Canales offense work very well, things could happen. So take a chance there. Take a chance there on Calvin Ridley. See if that's who you can make your wide receiver one, because you're not going to be able to do it in the draft, and you've got to make it work in free agency. So you've got to take some risk.
Yeah, and the other thing that kind of factors into the equations, the Jacksonville Jaguars gave up a 3rd-round draft pick to acquire the services of Calvin Ridley. And this could be a rental type situation. But if they retain Calvin Ridley, they also have to give up that. It becomes a 2nd-round selection, right? So there's kind of a little bit of a cat and mouse game here as far as the Jaguars are concerned, what they're willing. So a lot of people are saying, hey, the Jags need to sign him, but it's going to cost them a 2nd-rounder essentially to retain Calvin Ridley. Now, a guy who's going to come on the cheap, we talk about teams that are looking for maybe some cheaper wide receivers. Darnell Mooney happens to be one of those guys. We saw him have some success 2 years ago. Last season, not so much. Tera, tell me about Darnell Mooney, where he fits.
We talked about Arizona, the likelihood that they will be getting a wide receiver with that, 4th overall pick. We're thinking Marvin Harrison Jr. We're not entirely sure now because, apparently New England is having some strange thoughts over there in terms of what they're doing with the pick. But regardless, there is going to be a new wide receiver there in town, more than likely, whether that's, Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors. And we need a wide receiver 2 to play off of him. Could Michael Wilson develop into that wide receiver 2? Yeah, maybe. Absolutely. But I think this would be a good chance for Darnell Mooney to get a fresh start, because he did show the upside and capabilities of someone who can be a strong wide receiver 2. Things just kind of went sideways there in Chicago. DJ Moore came to town, and he, obviously DJ Moore takes precedence there in volume for a wide receiver 2. In that offense with Justin Fields, it just really didn't exist. So Kyler Murray is more than capable of supplying volume to a wide receiver 2. It would be a nice fit there, and it would be a good fresh start for Darnell Mooney.
Aaron Rodgers, he's got his Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. He's got his Allen Lazard and Allen Lazard. What he doesn't have is his Marquez Valdez-Scantling, a guy that can stretch the field in New York. Darnell Mooney is one of the best deep wide receivers in the game today. Now, not necessarily Justin Fields couldn't necessarily get him the ball very often, especially on that. But Aaron Rodgers, we know darn well he can get the ball to a deep guy. And unlike Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Darnell Mooney can catch a ball. So it seems to be a good match for me. I love Darnell Mooney possibly going to the Jets and then throwing Breece Hall and maybe Conklin in there. I mean, Conklin's a guy we don't talk about. I mean, he's like one of 5 tight ends over the last 3 seasons that has at least 80 targets. I mean, we don't talk about Conklin as that kind of guy. So this offense for the Jets, with Aaron Rodgers coming back, you give him Darnell Mooney as a field stretcher, it becomes that much more dangerous. Now, speaking of field stretchers, some may consider Gabriel Davis a field stretcher, but really, he's only got one pattern that he runs. It's usually a go. That's pretty much where his limitations happen to be. And yes, I am hating on Gabriel Davis. Now, with that being said, Tera, what's a team that maybe doesn't hate Gabriel Davis as much as I do?
We've seen the Jags do this before, where they overpaid a wide receiver at the time in Christian Kirk, and people had question marks around, and was it really worth it? Can he be an alpha? And they did it because they needed to bring someone onto their team, and it required a little bit of overpaying. I think that they might be the perfect team to take this chance with Gabe Davis. I think Gabe Davis' contract is going to surprise people. He'll be given a decent amount of money. And him combined with Christian Kirk could be very interesting, especially if maybe they retain Zay Jones as well. Could be a very low profile, but potentially productive receiving core.
I just want to send Gabriel Davis to the place where wide receivers go to die, and that is Tennessee. I mean, let's call it the way it is. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, he's had some varying degrees of success. Will Levis is a serviceable quarterback who flashed at times last year. Treylon Burks, we haven't even seen Treylon Burks do much of anything. But you know what? On paper, DeAndre Hopkins, Treylon Burks, and Gabriel Davis there with Hopkins, and it's not a bad trio of wide receivers. And you throw Tajay Spears into that. I mean, This offense, if they get, and that, you know what, if you get Gabriel Davis as a wide receiver 3, I think we don't hate him as much. I think the problem is we've had these expectations where we saw that Chiefs game where he had like 4 touchdowns. And then we thought, okay, this is the breakout that's going to happen for Gabriel Davis. And he never lived up to those expectations. I think if you pump those brakes and you bring back those expectations and you call Gabriel Davis what he is and you pay him for what he can do, then he doesn't seem so bad. And I think in Tennessee, he fits that role. Treylon Burks, DeAndre Hopkins, Gabriel Davis. Even I might stop hating on him because those expectations are, okay, you know what? He's a wide receiver 3, not a wide receiver 2. He's working with Will Levis, not Josh Allen. So I think you can justify Gabriel Davis and who he is in that landing spot. Now, another wide receiver that I think is very interesting is Curtis Samuel of the Washington Commanders. Where do you see him landing here when it's all said and done?
I feel like Kansas City could be interesting. Obviously, when we're looking at Kansas City, we want them to make the big splash in free agency, but they traditionally haven't done it. And hey, it's traditionally, it's traditionally worked out fine for them. So the type of receiver that can give them, a reliable option, good hands, be cost effective, and help them to yet another Super Bowl, I feel like Curtis Samuel is that guy.
Yeah, for me, I got him going to the Miami Dolphins. You look at what the Miami Dolphins weren't able to do once Tyreek Hill or once Jalen Waddle went down to injury. They didn't have that second option that could step up. Chase Claypool's not that guy. Cedric Wilson wasn't that guy. Chosen Anderson certainly isn't that guy. But Curtis Samuel, I think he could fit the bill on a short-term thing. Plus, he gives them another option working out of the slot, gives Tua Tagovailoa, who's one of the most disrespected quarterbacks in the National Football League, another option in the passing game. I think he's going to come in at a reasonable price. So I think the Miami Dolphins, you add Samuel to the Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, this offense becomes that much better. So I really like the fit as far as Curtis Samuel and the Dolphins are concerned. Now, we talked about Odell Beckham Jr., and he's not exactly who he once was. We also talked about the Philadelphia Eagles. Not afraid to pinch a few pennies or take a shot on a veteran. We've seen Julio Jones go there. So I could see Odell Beckham Jr. possibly fitting in with the Philadelphia Eagles next season. You put him there with A.J. Brown, and you put him there with Devontae Smith, and suddenly this Eagles team, it's a little bit better. I mean, Julio Jones is what he is. Quez Watkins, we saw what he was able to do. And Quez Watkins, he can give you something from time to time. But Odell Beckham Jr., I think he is what we want to see in Philadelphia, that big name guy on the cheap. That's where I got him going. Tara, where do you got OBJ?
Send him back to LA. Send him back to the LA Rams. It worked. He can be, a third option there, like DeMarcus Robinson. But obviously, he could be a, 3-4 option there. I think the big bang, years for Odell are gone. Send him back to the last place he had a good connection, which would be Matt Stafford.
Hey, Matt Stafford, he likes to work with guys. He's not afraid to sling that ball around. If a guy even is open by this much, Matthew Stafford's going to try and get the ball in there. And finally, the last free agent we're going to talk about, we're not going to waste our time on the tight ends because really, when you look at the tight ends, it's Dalton Schultz, Hunter Henry, Noah Fant, Gerald Everett, Mike Gesicki. Nobody cares. There's really no fantasy relevant there. Dalton Schultz, he's not leaving Houston. He's going to stay at the Houston Texans. After that, I really don't care where any of these tight ends land. But I am interested in where Tyler Boyd could end up. And Tara, you have him going to the New England Patriots. Why is that?
It's because the Patriots have painted themselves into a weird corner with those weird contracts that they gave to Juju and Devontae Parker. So you need something on the cheap that you can get. I feel like Tyler Boyd, strong veteran, not going to be very costly and can help you on the cheap, retain some kind of push forward and off in the passing offense without having to make any drastic investments.
And for me, I'm with you. I got him going to the New England Patriots because, well, why not? You look at this Patriots team, and they're not in a bad spot. They're not a great team, but because of where they're drafting, they're going to have themselves potentially a stud quarterback coming into the play, whether it's Drake May or Jalen Daniels. I mean, you got Pop Douglas there. Demario Douglas is a one option there. They're probably going to retain Hunter Henry when it's all said and done. So you need that second option because it's not Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, if they would have signed, I don't know, say a Jacoby Myers when they had an opportunity to do so, this team could look a lot different. But if they choose to go the quarterback route rather than the wide receiver route, then this makes a lot of sense having Tyler Boyd get an opportunity in this New England Patriots offense. Expectations are low. We aren't expecting a lot from this New England team as far as the offense is concerned. So that's where Tyler Boyd fits in quite well. Now, what else fits in well is the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast each and every week on your playlist, whether it's on Apple or Spotify. Tera Roberts and myself, we are bringing it each and every week, and we're glad to have you join us. Tera, let the people know where they can find Miss Fantasy.
You can find all my work on Twitter or X at It's Tera Time, ITSTERATIME. Find it all there. Podcasts, videos, all that good stuff.
There you have it, and we will see you guys next time.